Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Offering Abundance. So in today's live, I'm going to be doing another covering for my African Ancestry Remember Who You Are Study Guide Volume 1 that I shared in one of my previous videos. So I'll just show you that one again. In this binder that I had put together, like I've stated, I have my ancestral DNA summaries. I'm putting together a collection of African medicine studies. I've got my study guide here, my Mende language manual. Lots of good stuff will be going into here, and I plan on expanding to a much larger size binder, but this is the beginning stages for that. So for today's topic, as you can see in the video name, it is called What's in a Name? And that is basically going to go over some of the questions here in this section. This is on page, not sure if there's a page number, but it goes into, let's see, I think it may be page 26. It just doesn't say here, but I'm going off of what's on page 23 here. And then just counting up to this page. So I'm assuming this would be page 26. So I'm just going to read off what it states here. If I can get this in the camera. There we go. So I'm going to start up here. It says names here at the top. And so it says here, during the period of the transatlantic slave trade, we lost all of the components of identity, our names, our languages, and our family connections. So in this exercise, it's going to give an example here, and it's going to ask a question. So it says here, John is a Hebrew name, meaning Yahweh is gracious. Erica is a Norse name, meaning eternal ruler, ever powerful. So the question here is asking, where is your name from and what does it mean? So my personal answer to this one, I didn't really get a culturally significant name. So I wasn't really able to, write down where my name is from or what it means. However, I have been in a period where I am looking to encompass a deeply ingrained name that connects me to my Sierra Leonean heritage. Being that it is a maternal link, I feel like identifying with a name that would be really powerful within that bloodline is where I'm looking to make my return as far as who I want to be named under. So I'm definitely in the transition period of finding a significant name. African names hold a lot of significance. They hold a lot of spiritual value. They hold a lot of rank when it comes to different tribes. So I definitely am living through that experience and trying to find out what is going to be the most powerful and deeply meaningful name for me. So stay tuned for that process. I do want to share that with my viewers here, and that would definitely be something coming up in the new year in 2026. And that kind of just walks into the next question here that is asking, would you consider a new name? If so, what would you like for it to reflect about you and why? So, as I was stating before, I have been considering, changing my name, being more connected culturally and tribally to my heritage. So, my answer here is yes. And then for the next question, what would you like for it to reflect about you and why? My answer would be, for me, I would like for it to reflect the perseverance that my maternal heritage encompassed. It's definitely something that is connected via blood ties. I feel a strong link to that maternal resilience, and I really want to find something within, that ancestral code that represents who my foremothers were, what they stood upon, how they fought through all of the oppression and how they made it this long and you know in history, and not really having any direct connection to the continent is the only thing that disconnects me from knowing what names may have been significant. However, it is still very much possible to connect with my people. So I definitely want something that reflects my perseverance, the perseverance of these women. And the answer, or the question of the why, I would say, is because I feel that our maternal links as women have a very huge power over us. It definitely is why a lot of our characteristics and traits are what they are. There are a lot of ancestral memories that are held within our maternal lineage, and that is definitely something that I want to pass down through my children, from my daughter, and moving on down from daughter to daughter to daughter, to keep those links tight and to keep them connected to our people. So that's definitely the why for me, is staying connected and keeping those powers that we have live and well. So that's definitely, an answer for me when it comes to names. What's in a name? I feel like, names are very important. There is a statement here at the top that I'm going to read that is really significant to this portion. So it just says here, how did we even get here? And then it says, well, you should never forget that we are all the victims of the original identity theft. So returning to our African ancestral identity is something that all people from the continent, within the diaspora and outside of diaspora of the continent, should definitely think upon and try to reconnect with. So that's that part. And then on the next page, they have a chart about a lot of African Americans who went from, their birth names and changed their names to become more significant with their people. So I'm just going to read in this exercise here because these are all tied together. So some African Americans select an African language name. Others pick a different descriptor. You may recognize those below who changed their birth names. So this is kind of an exercise where you can match birth names with, the section where it says their chosen names. So it will show you here, you will see Malcolm Little. And we can match Malcolm Little with what he chose his name to be. So Malcolm Little became Malcolm X. Then we have all of these different names that we can go through and see which name, returned back to their chosen name. So we have Joan Deborah Byron, Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr., which would obviously be Muhammad Ali. We have Araminta Ross, Leroy Jones, Isabella Baumfree, Stockley Carmichael, Ronald Everett, Ramona Johnson, and Lou Alcindor. And, in the second section here, you'll be able to choose. Do you know who chose their name to be which one? So I think it's really nice. You'll see names like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You'll see Sojourner Truth, who was Sojourner Truth before they came Sojourner Truth. Kwame Ture, Harriet Tubman. What was Harriet Tubman's name before she chose her name? Amiri Baraka. So it's really nice. And then they have one section here that shares like what was this person known for, and it didn't give like any examples for you to kind of go off of, except for one. So I guess you're going to write down what this person was known for. But the example that they have here is civil rights activism and Black nationalism. So you can say, well, who in this group was known as a civil rights activist and a Black nationalism or a Black nationalist? So you could definitely tie Malcolm Little to Malcolm X and Malcolm X to what he was known for as a Black nationalist and a civil rights activist. Then we could, talk about who all of these other individuals were and what they were known for. So I think it's really nice to know throughout history how it's not, something that is uncommon for African Americans to do. There are a lot of people throughout history who returned their names to their cultural significance. And then we're going to go, I think this is the last page in this section. This one just basically restates what the erasure involved. So it says here, Western education continues to ignore the full history and contributions of people of African descent. We have been taught to believe that our story began with slavery, whether we are in the Americas or in the Caribbean. So what we can do about the erasure kind of ties back to what, what's in a name. That's how you can replace what was erased. You can reconnect yourself with what was erased, and really you can start from the soil instead of starting with the chains, right? We came from the soil. We didn't, come about through chains. So I think it's really good to know that our history begins before slavery. There are things to be proud of. There are things that we otherwise still are unclear about and should definitely be teaching our children about and passing down from generation to generation. So yeah, it's just going to go through here and talk about history, and then it goes back to before the history of slavery, which is something that I've been really diving into and not nullifying my knowledge and only stopping at those traumatic experiences, but understanding before that, what were our people doing? How were they living? What were their practices like? What did religion look like? So it's really nice to have something like this to really go off of, because there's a lot to learn about the continent. There are 54 countries. Some people don't understand that Africa is not one country or under a scope of states like the United States. It is one continent with 54 countries, and then within those countries, there are cities, states, provinces. So it is such a huge plethora of cultures. There are trillions of languages, so it's hard to just pinpoint one thing and say it is customary to everyone. So I really have been enjoying reading this. One more thing that I wanted to share here, which is really important and will be relevant for this new year for me, is tracing my paternal lineage. I've already done my maternal for my mother's mother, and my next journey is through my paternal lineage to figure out who my forefathers were from my father's 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 father and on way down. So I'm really excited to figure out who were his people, what were their, languages, what tribes were they from, where are we connected through our forefathers. So I'm just going to read what it says here. Again, number 1 says every person inherits 50% of their DNA from each parent. Number 2, sons also inherit a Y chromosome from their father. Daughters do not inherit this. So that's what makes things so complex when it comes to doing DNA testing is I can do a DNA test, but it's not going to tell me who my father's father's father was. I have to go to my father and figure out what was that lineage because we don't get those chromosomes. Number 3 will state the son in turn passes his Y chromosome to his sons. So we can only figure that out through the sons of the sons of the sons of the fathers of the fathers. So that is definitely something that I'm really interested in understanding and sharing here as well. Number 4 states, since the Y chromosome does not change much over generations, it provides us with valuable information about our deep paternal ancestry. Men have the same Y chromosomes as all of their paternal ancestors over the past 500 to 2,000 years. And what I've been learning a lot from a lot of the videos that I've watched from African ancestry is there are a lot of men who inherited Y chromosomes from non-African men based on the fact that that is your colonizer's DNA within your Y chromosome. So then you'll start seeing that DNA coming from other places. So I'm just going to share an example here. Like when I took my DNA results through the regular ancestry DNA test, I got, some lineages here that are outside of the African continent, right? So you see all the way up here, this is highlighted, and this is in areas like Western Europe, Sweden, and Ireland. And I say to myself, well, there's no one directly in my bloodline who comes from these places. My families were not mixed. They did not mix outside of their race. From what I see from my history are all melanated people. So that's why it was really interesting to see that because clearly somewhere down the line, there were those slave owners who that DNA came from. So I think it's really interesting to go through the paternal history and figure out you may have mixtures there that, were not something that was well praised. So that's going to be it for this video. I'm going to read one quote here that they have in the front of this book here. I love quotes. I love proverbs. And this is one from Maya Angelou. For Africa to me is more than a glamorous fact. It is a historical truth. No man can know where he is going unless he knows exactly where he has been and exactly how he arrived at his present place. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please give it 2 thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more DIYs, recipes, and reviews. Thanks so much for watching.